Exclusive interview with Ghanaian President Dramani Mahama coming up on Leaders Talk. He said President Xi Jinping's global governance initiative embodies fairness and justice.
I am supportive and very excited about the initiatives that President Xi is outlining.
He noted that Ghana and China share a natural affinity.
If you have somebody who supports you like that, naturally they are a friend and you gravitate closer together.
And he called China a genuine friend of Africa.
Because of China's solidarity with the Global South, it understands the needs of the developing world, and China has stepped forward to be able to assist.
Exclusive interview with President Dramani Mahama. Stay tuned.
Hello and welcome to Leaders Talk, where we meet leaders, thinkers, and trailblazers. I'm Wang Guan. Now, this year marks the 65th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between China and Ghana. In October, the President of Ghana, Mr. John Dramani Mahama, visited China. From economic and trade cooperation to cultural exchanges, from jointly building the Belt and Road Initiative to sustainable development projects, how does he envision the future of China-Ghana relations? What are his thoughts after hearing from President Xi when President Xi elaborated on the newly proposed Global Governance Initiative? Also, facing the scars of a century of colonialism and now moving toward what he calls Africa's second awakening, how does Ghana hope to explore a new path towards modernization, not just for itself, but also for countries in the Global South? Here's our conversation.
As China and Ghana marked the 65th anniversary of diplomatic ties, President Mahama arrived in China on October 11, 2025, leading a delegation of Ghanaian officials as well as business representatives. On the morning of October 14, President Xi Jinping met Mahama at the Great Hall of the People in Beijing. Xi stressed that China firmly supports Ghana in pursuing a modernization path suited to its national conditions, and stands ready to work with Ghana to upgrade cooperation across the board, contributing to the building of an all-weather China-Africa community with a shared future in the new era. Beyond attending the Global Leaders Meeting on Women, Mahama also hosted a presidential investment forum to promote Ghana's signature products, including cocoa, coffee, nuts, and handicrafts, to the Chinese market. On October 15, he visited the exhibition marking the 30th anniversary of the implementation of Fuzhou's 3820 strategic project, a pivotal initiative launched in 1992 aimed at transforming Fuzhou into a modern metropolis, gaining insights into the blueprint President Xi planned when he was governor in Fuzhou.
President Mahama, welcome back to China. This year, Mr. President, marks the 65th anniversary of the diplomatic relations between China and Ghana. As President, as former Vice President, how would you reflect on this very important relationship that you have been helping to build upon this very anniversary? And where do you want to take it for the next phases?
I think it's an important milestone. Ghana was one of the first countries to establish diplomatic relations with China after we gained independence in 1957, and a very friendly relation developed between our first president, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, and Chairman Mao, and also with Prime Minister Chu Enlai. They developed a personal friendship, and so it drew the two countries together. And so that relationship is one that we cherish, and 65 years in that relationship is an important milestone. We're celebrating this 65 years anniversary in a world that is changing, that is very different from when Dr. Kwame Nkrumah and Chairman Mao and Chu Enlai existed. And so we need to pivot that relation to look at the new global order. And that's why I am, supportive and very excited about the initiatives that President Xi is outlining. For instance, the initiative on governance,
global governance
initiative. And I believe that Ghana and most of African countries support that initiative. The other initiative, like the Global Security Initiative, that works towards security for all. In Africa, we all have our own problems of security, issues of cyber threats. Aside from that, we have violent extremism. China itself has its own challenges with violent extremism. And so I think that there's a time for us to partner to ensure that everybody can live securely and be able to create prosperity and opportunity for their people.
You met President Xi some 10 years ago, and now you're meeting again. Actually, you just met with President Xi. How's the meeting this time go?
Yes, I met President Xi, like you said, 10 years ago. And so I was not surprised when he became president and began the serious reforms that have advanced, China to where it is. He remembered clearly our meeting at that time. Indeed, this is the third time I'm meeting President Xi. And he remembers every single occasion that we met, yeah.
That's impressive. What areas of cooperation did you discuss?
Yeah, we discussed many areas, and one of the areas we discussed was trade between Ghana and China. You know that the global order is changing. Countries are acting more unilaterally. And so we believe that it is a time for countries that believe in multilateralism to actually show solidarity and come together. And so China has offered Africa a zero-tariff policy. Ghana has started negotiations with China. And so that negotiation is taking place. We can sign off as the second country for zero tariffs with China.
Your Excellency, if you look at the trade data, that is very impressive. $11.8 billion of trade between Ghana and China in 2024. That is more than 7% of annual increase. And that momentum continued into this year, 2025.
Actually, China is Ghana's biggest trading partner. And trade between Ghana and China has continued to grow exponentially. The zero-tariff policy is now kicking in. And so I believe that it will create a conducive atmosphere for us to grow that trade even more. We're looking on the Ghanaian side for Chinese industries to come and help us add value to the products that we have so that we can export back into the Chinese market. Apart from that, there's the important issue of harmonization of standards. China has about 40 standards. And so we need to harmonize our standards with the Chinese standards so that it makes it easier for us to export into the Chinese market. So those are the areas we're ironing out. And I think that we can reach understanding as long as the relationship between us is what it is.
You raised a very important point, Mr. President, that is the reindustrialization or industrialization for some parts of Africa. That is to move up the value chain. Do you think China has been coming in to help in this regard when it comes to infrastructure building and vocational training, producing skilled workers for not just Ghana but Africa as well?
Yes, China has been a true friend of Africa. And I believe that under the Belt and Road Initiative and under FOCAC, major infrastructural projects that are transformative have occurred in many African countries. I can speak for Ghana. We discovered huge quantities of gas offshore, and we decided that we wanted to use that gas for power. But you need to process that gas before you can generate power in a thermal plant. And so China invested almost $1 billion to set up our first gas processing plants at a place called Etuabo in Ghana. Up till today, it produces the bigger parts of gas to fire our power production in Ghana. And so that is a symbol of the cooperation between China and Ghana. We have our second largest hydroelectric power dam at a place called Bui. Yeah, that also was a power plant that was built by China. Everywhere you look, you can find the footprints of China. Accra is our capital and the biggest city. 40 million gallons of the water, clean drinking water, that is treated and pumped to Accra every day as a result of a facility that was provided by China to expand the Pong water treatment plant. And so, yes, China has been a partner when it comes to infrastructure development. I cannot talk about the roads. As for roads and bridges, there are so many of them. Yeah, and stadiums, markets. I would say that China has been pivotal in Africa's infrastructural development. In other places, they built railways that interconnect cities. In Ghana, they finance rural electrification projects, and that is why today Ghana can boast of about almost 90% electricity access in our country, one of the highest in Africa.
What about vocational training and cultural exchanges programs, Mr. President? We know that some vocational schools and Chinese medicine institutions from Tianjin are partnering with Ghanaian institutions as well as the Confucius Institute. You do not have just one, but three Confucius Institutes in your country?
We have three of them
remarkable.
In the three public universities, one in Accra, one in Kumasi, and one in Cape Coast. I think that it cements the exchange between Ghana and China. Many Ghanaians are beginning to speak Chinese.
I know quite a few here in Beijing.
Yeah, they come back, with the skills that they acquired in China. And there's a good colony of Chinese speakers. And so it's interesting, when Chinese companies come and establish industries, sometimes they don't need to bring Chinese people to Ghana. They find a pool of Ghanaians who are qualified and can speak Chinese. And so it makes it very easy for them to employ them and be able to carry out their work. China also funded our University of Health and Allied Sciences. And so the campus that's the University of Health and Allied Sciences, that's training a lot of doctors, paramedics, and other specialists, was funded by China. And that is one of our public universities that has a good reputation, is performing very well, and that was based on friendship.
One thing I should add, Mr. President, is that Ghanaians do not just speak Chinese, but they excel at it.
Yes.
I know one Ghanaian who was a friend of mine who went on to win the Hanyu Chinese speaking competition globally. That is the highest, most highly regarded Chinese speaking competition anywhere in the world. So they truly excelled at it.
And they speak it flawlessly with the right accent,
Yeah, I know.
I wish I could speak Chinese too.
The Global Leaders Meeting on Women convened in Beijing in October 2025, drawing participants from more than 110 countries. As a guest of the summit, President Mahama said the gathering was of great significance and highlighted China's leadership in advancing women's development worldwide.
This time you're attending the Global Leaders Meeting on Women as guest of honor. You delivered a major speech talking about the connection of improving the welfare of women from China, from Ghana, and from around the world. How would you assess the advancement made by China in terms of improving the rights of women?
Well, it's good to be in Beijing, which is very firmly associated with the 1995 Women's Conference here in this city. 30 years on, I want to commend President Xi for championing the cause of women and calling this Global Leaders Committee on Women to review the progress that has been made in respect of women across the world. President Xi gave the keynote. He mentioned the advances that women have made all across the world, including in China, and also mentioned the gaps that exist in terms of accelerating women's empowerment and equality. I gave a bit of a report card of Ghana. President Xi, of course, had given a report card on China, and women have made quite serious advances here in China. In Ghana, our women have also advanced quite well. Currently, we have gender parity when it comes to enrollment in school. As many girls are going to school as boys. Before, it wasn't the same. Aside from that, women have made advances, held some of the top government positions.
During the speech that you mentioned, President Xi Jinping's speech addressing the Global Leaders Meeting on Women, one word he touched upon for over 20 times is the word of development. He said the Chinese women contributed to the development of China's economy, political system, as well as its cultural influence. In fact, there's a data here that validated what President Xi said. Women in China accounted for over 43% of employment in high-quality development sectors, 45.8% in science and technology, Chinese women, and roughly one-third in digital trade, e-commerce, and live streaming. What are your thoughts on all this progress?
Yeah, those were very impressive numbers. China, because it was home to the Beijing Declaration, has made quite serious advancements in accelerating women's empowerment. That's admirable. And I believe that we should be proud of what China has done. In our country, we're trying to push women's empowerment, and I think that women have made very serious advancements in Ghana too. Women dominate business and trade. And so when you come to the area of commerce, marketing goods and all that, women dominate that sector. In education, like I said, more women are going to school and staying in school.
Located in West Africa on the northern shore of the Gulf of Guinea, Ghana borders the Atlantic Ocean to the south with a coastline stretching 562 kilometers. The country is rich in agricultural, fishery, forestry, and mineral resources. From the 15th century onward, Western colonial powers invaded coastal areas of present-day Ghana, plundering resources and trafficking enslaved Africans, leaving the continent under the shadow of colonialism for centuries. The Bandung Conference in 1955 marked a turning point for Asian and African national liberation movements, which accelerated the collapse of the global colonial system. In 1957, Ghana's independence ignited the first torch of freedom in sub-Saharan Africa and came to be known as the dawn of African awakening. In February 2025, the 38th African Union Summit was held in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, under the theme Advancing Justice for Africans and People of African Descent Through Reparations. At the summit, President Mahama called for a new wave of awakening across the African continent.
You gave a very powerful speech at the 38th African Union Summit, where you talk about the fact that perhaps there should be another round of Africa reawakening. You talk about justice for Africans and people of African descent, repatriation, not just in financial terms, but there are 3 R's that you mentioned, restitution, rehabilitation, and guarantee of non-repetition. Can you elaborate on that for us?
Africa suffered 2 serious crimes against humanity. The first was the slave trade, and I believe that that was the greatest crime against humanity, where between 12 and 15 million Africans were taken from Africa to the Caribbean and the Americas and Europe. And their labor was used to build what today is modern Western civilization. This labor was unpaid labor. They were not remunerated for the work they did in the sugarcane fields, in building the railways, in building the roads, the bridges, and all that. We believe that first and foremost, it should be recognized as the greatest crime against humanity. And we must condemn the activity of slavery. Of the people who were shipped to what I call the New World, that's the Western world, estimated that as many as 2 million did not arrive at the destination because they were either too sick or they died on board and they were just tossed over into the ocean. That was genocide, And so it's an issue that the first step is for us to accept. And so Ghana wants to move a motion in the UN next year, asking the world to recognize the slave trade as the greatest crime against humanity. And so we'll continue to push. I'm the African champion on reparations. When I spoke even at the UN, I raised the issue of reparations. And so I do think that that is to do with slavery. With regards to colonialism, the Berlin Conference partitioned Africa, and the European nations took colonies in Africa, ran those colonies, exploited the natural resources, and transferred those natural resources, oil palm, gold, minerals, cocoa, and other products, to develop their countries. And it's only from the late 50s that countries like Ghana got independent. And so that was an injustice. Colonialism was an injustice against African countries.
You expressed admiration for the founding father of Ghana, Nkrumah, multiple times, quoting him in his speeches about Africa's first round of awakening, whereby he said the best way for Ghana to become an independent state is to be an independent state. Why did you admire him so much?
Kwame Nkrumah was one of the leading Pan-Africanists, and he believed not only in the capability of Africans to be able to manage our own affairs, but he also believed that Africa should unite in order that we can optimize our potential to create opportunities for our people.
There have been questions, comparisons of China's approach towards Africa over the years and decades versus previous powers. There's some questions associated on sustainability, on labor, on the nature of mutually beneficial cooperation. How would you assess the Chinese approach now that Ghana, the country you're leading, have been a pioneer in leading the first round of awakening of Africa?
Our relations with China have been historic. One, because China has maintained a solidarity with all developing countries and identifies itself strongly with the global South. And so that gives a natural, a basis and platform for cooperation. And you can't transform the economy without putting in the social and economic infrastructure. And so for many years, Africa found that if it had to do a highway between two principal cities, if it had to put a power plant, if it had to do transmission lines to be able to take electricity across the country, it had to turn to China. I think that because of China's solidarity with the global South, it understands the needs of the developing world. And China has stepped forward. Like you said, I was here in 1999, and I visited Shenzhen and Beijing at the time. Today, if I see Shenzhen and Beijing, I mean, they're so transformed. If you look at the railway map of China just 10, 15 years ago, and you look at the railway map today, high-speed trains and all that, I mean, it's like a complete, transformation. And so China understands the need to have that kind of transformative investment. And that is why it supports Africa in investing in transformative infrastructure. And I think that that's a good thing. But aside from that, our worldview, a lot of the time coincides with China's worldview. China has supported Africa in the quest for a permanent seat on the United Nations and continues to support Africa's position. And so if you have somebody who supports you like that, naturally, they are a friend, and you gravitate closer together.
I like this word, gravitate towards each other. That happens naturally, but also with some efforts. Do you see China as a strong partner in this in this Ghanaian transition from sovereign independence, which was realized a long time ago, to sovereign modernization?
Yeah, China has always solidarized with Africa in that regard.
And then the international landscape is more than complex, to put it mildly, complicated. As all this evolved, as you rightly mentioned, Mr. President, the Chinese leader, President Xi Jinping, proposed the global initiatives on governance. What promise do you think this Chinese philosophy, this way of governance, can play in perhaps ushering in a new era of true multilateralism going forward for the global South as well as for the rest of the world?
The global South has been left behind in the global order that has existed since the end of the World War. It's an unjust system in terms of global trade. It's an unjust system in terms of the global financial institutions. It's an unjust system in terms of the illicit financial flows from the global South to the global North. And so in fashioning a new global order, we must insist on justice and equality, and that the system is not rigged against Africa and the global South. And so that is what the parameters of any new global order should be. And so once China starts leading that initiative, I think that is something that we all must support. And it does not exclude the global north. For countries that understand the need for justice, I think they all can support this new initiative, that the new order should give African countries a greater say on the world's multilateral financial institutions. It should give Africa a greater say in the international multilateral bodies like the United Nations, so that we can be equal partners in determining how our world order is presented.
And finally, what do you want to say to the Chinese audience when you look ahead to the next decades of China, Ghana, as you said, solidarity and fraternity?
Well, I wish the Chinese people well, and I believe that we can continue to work together, especially in new areas of innovation and digitalization. China has worked hard to gain a comparative advantage when it comes to green energy and transitions, digitalization and innovation, artificial intelligence. And so I think that there's the opportunity for new partnerships between us and China. And China's transformation and development is an inspiration for all of us.
Your Excellency, President Mahama, thank you so much for your time and your insights.
Thank you very much.
President Mahama of Ghana said that he thoroughly appreciates China's role in bringing about true multilateralism and helping build a multipolar future. Especially, he spoke very highly of President Xi's 4 global initiatives. He reminded everyone that China had been with Africa since day one, and this solidarity and fraternity now enjoys renewed momentum. That will do it for this edition of Leaders Talk. I'm Wang Guan. Thank you for tuning in.